Wow, you all are very, very blessed to have Mrs. Blevins for a professor. I started here at Edison State years and years ago. I went on to UD and got my bachelor's degree, and Wright State I got my master's degree. I got it in art education. I taught in the Pickle school systems for over 20 years, and at Huber Heights for a couple of years, 3 years actually. Now, since this is a communication class, I'm not going to do a lot of talking, but I want to hear from you also, okay? I will tell you a little bit about my pictures. I love painting. I can't express that enough. I love to paint. This is oil, and that's my medium that I like to work in, okay? Now, since there's quite a few of you that have already did art and have communicated through your art, and I do think that that's what I do. When I start a painting, I don't just start it. I do a little history on the subject matter. Now, Mother Teresa, that's one of my favorite paintings. Number one, she's a magnificent lady. Now, I don't know if any of you have heard of her before, like your professor.
Stick your hands up. Come on. Oh, yeah.
Okay, okay. I read a book on her, and I thought her face and her hands, and not just the physical look, it was how she lived her life. And that really inspired me. I looked at this black and white photograph that I didn't take. It was a black and white photograph in the newspaper. And as soon as I saw that photograph, I knew that it was something that I wanted to do, okay? And most people say, how long does it take you to do a painting? It varies, actually. With me, I usually, since I had young children, I used to paint at night. And I wouldn't paint all day. It would take me probably a week to do a painting like that if I stayed on it. But I didn't. You know, I would pick up my brush at night and I would paint. But I enjoy my work so much that I don't want to sign it yet. I just keep wanting to work on it. And let me tell you, as an artist, sometimes you can overdo things. You can keep working in it, and you can mess it up. So just know that if you are an artist, you got to know when to quit, okay?
Same with writing, guys.
That's right. Almost with everything. Yeah. That's almost with everything. You can overdo things. Since this is a communication class, there is a book on Mother Teresa by Susan Conroy. It's called let me see here, The Secret to, it's called Lessons of Love and Secrets of Sanctity. And it's by Susan Conroy. If you want a good reading, a reading that's going to change your life to want to do for others and to do good, that's one of the books you should read. Mother Teresa had lots of great quotes, and you can just get on your computer and plug in Mother Teresa and come up with all these wonderful, life-changing quotes. But in any event, I don't know if you have just noticed her face and her hands and all the stuff that I enjoyed putting in that picture. Now, when you first saw this picture, what did you think about this picture? And maybe you didn't know her. Yes, she's an old lady. She's a nun, as you can see. She lived in Calcutta, India, and that's where she kind of worked. That's not where she was born, but that's where she worked and did all of her good work with people that needed her, that was sick.
The poorest of the poor.
That's right.
The poorest of the poor. Think of people you know who are poor. Think of yourself. You think, well, I'm poor. Think of the poorest of the poor. No water, food,
no nothing.
no clothing, no shoes.
She did almost everything for them and trying to help them to be able to do for themselves. But in any event, what do you think about her? Anybody? I don't. Do you like the picture?
Talk to her. Come on, guys.
Okay. When I paint, I'm a realist. I like to paint. You know, there's different types of painting, and when I paint, I like to paint realistically. That's me. Abstract is beautiful. You know, abstract is like, okay, I think that's a figure. Maybe it's a flower or something like that. And that's okay. Those are beautiful pictures, but that's not me. I got to be true to myself. Now, I most often, since I am African American, I most often paint African Americans. I love it. Because, you know, when I go out, I can't always find pictures that look like me. And I like to make pictures that look like me, okay? This picture here, the saxophone player, I'm sure that some of you have seen this down near the music, is it near the music department? Okay, it's hanging. Well, Edison State, I forget the gentleman that bought it. He brought it and he wanted it hanging in Edison State. But this picture has a wonderful, what do you think, before I tell you about this gentleman, well, what do you think about him? Do you like music?
Guys, let me ask you something. If she said, which she's not going to, I'm going to give you one of the three, which would you opt for and why? Now that'll get you thinking about what you like about it. See, so many artists never hear from people who are looking at their work. So if she said, which of the three do you like best and why? Talk to Linda. And then she's going to tell you about the sax
Yeah,
player.
well, which do you, yes?
I like the background.
Oh, you like the background. It's kind of abstract, isn't it? Well, you know what? When I did that background, I had to come up with my own background in a way because it was a brick, dark, kind of dirty looking background. And I just kind of threw some colors in there that I thought would go with him, that would go with the whole subject matter. And that's why. Is there anybody else that want to comment on it?
I just wondered, why is his eyes closed?
Okay. You know, if you've seen musicians, when they play, they're feeling the music. And I assume that's why his eyes are closed. Now, this man I met in New York. I went to visit my daughter, and we were walking through Grand Central Station. I don't know if you've ever been to New York or walked down that corridor at Grand Central Station. It's dark. This man was in the corner. He had a little cup out. Obviously, there was something that I felt when I saw him, because he wanted people to put money in the little thing. He wasn't asking, but he did. And of course, before I took his picture, I had to ask him. You just can't just go up and take people's picture and you know you're going to paint it. And I asked him, I told him what I was going to do with it, and he was very, very gracious. But he's got his eyes closed because he's probably feeling the music. You know, I think saxophones are one of the nicest looking instruments. And I'm not even a musician, or I'm not into really music, but I think saxophones are really, really nice. So
Somebody else said, wanted to talk. Go ahead.
oh yes, go ahead.
I like how the background kind of evokes this feeling that, like, he seems like he's working class, struggling, obviously trying to get money, and doing what he loves. And that background kind of evokes the feeling that, like, he's in his own world regardless of his situation. He just kind of can't be pulled out of that world.
You're right. You're right about that. And you know, he would have had fun doing that even if no one was listening, probably. But he had a crowd. Who else? Yes.
The way that you captured him in the original picture, you know, his posture, his stance, and everything. The way his eyes are closed, and it's just really, you can almost hear the music coming out of the saxophone.
Good, good.
That's one of the big things I like about it. is
Oh,
that you
good.
can almost hear it.
Good. That's I like that. I like that.
More people, come on, because you guys want to
Yes.
talk.
When you're starting a painting, what's the first thing you start?
When I start a painting, I take about 2 or 3 weeks to just look at the picture that I'm going to paint. And I size it up. Because when you paint, you want things to be in proportion. And when you see a picture and you see something out of proportion that doesn't look like if his head's a little too big or ears are too big for the head, you just want to, I just look at it and I get my own feelings. And then when I begin to paint, I sketch. I just do a light sketch. I don't try to do a full sketch with rendering or shading or shadows or anything like that. But that's okay if that's what you want to do. But for me, that's a waste of time for me, not for someone else. So that's what I start with. I get my proportions right, and I try. And they're not always right, even when you put them on with pencil. Because as I start painting, that's when I can bring them into focus. That's how I start. And I love mixing oil. You can mix all day long with oil, and it doesn't dry on you, okay, like acrylic does.
Yvonne, other people, talk to her. Come on, talk to her.
Is there, yeah. Anything
I
else?
love the sax. I love the whole thing. I love all three of them.
Mhm. Thank
But
you.
I love the movement of that. And I'm like Rob. I can hear this guy. I can see this guy. I can feel.
Good.
I've seen him. I've heard that. It feels so right, so beautiful.
Good.
Mother Teresa, she feels so right, so beautiful. And this little boy, my gosh.
He's got a wonderful face. I was drawn to this face of his, and I wanted to make it big. What do you think about, I mean, you probably didn't know he was from Ghana, because, he could look like any of the other African boys, but he's educated. At least he goes to school, let's put it that way.
And he's not clowning for her. In the picture that she took, he's not clowning with a big smile. There's something thoughtful, something meditative, something absolutely beautiful that makes you want to wonder. You want to get in his head. You want to get in his mind. You want to wonder what's going to happen to this kid.
He's the type of person that I think I'd want to get to know. A little boy that I really like having around. I have 2 boys of my own, and I'm drawn to little black boys and painting them and knowing their life. And as you know, a lot of statistics show that little black boys are they fall off in their education at a certain age, and I just think that's something that we have to really pay attention to and help them to. It's not all about sports. Sports is good, and it can get you a long way, but education is the key. You're here because
This is something that I saw that you did recently was your mama. And I want you to talk to my students, if you will, for a minute about doing the portrait of your mother and why you did it and how it felt and how she responded. Because all of us have people in our lives that are so important to us, and we want to capture those moments.
Oh, the picture of my mother that was quilting, that's the one you're talking about. My mother, I mean, everybody has a mother, and I loved her dearly. And she was artistic, not in painting, but in just working with her hands. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have her quilt on her lap, and I wanted her, because she took great joy every time I would come to see her. After I got married, she would have a quilt, and she would be patching it together. And she won quite a few little prizes just from her designs and her quilting. So I didn't bring that. I could have brought that.
Can you see that portrait of her mother in your mind? can you see the contrast between the wild, beautiful colors of the quilt
Mhm.
and then her mother's beautiful caramel colored skin and the
Mhm.
gray hair and so forth?
Yeah.
See, that's what an artist does. An artist, and you know, the people in your life. I look at all of you. I look at Kathy's hair. I look at Gustavo's hair. I look at you guys and I think, oh, gosh, an artist could do wonderful.
Yeah, and just remember, an artist, when you work on a painting and you have a picture, you can take liberties to do little other things other than what you see. You can put more gray hair in or have something not so in place. I like that kind of natural, kind of feel. And I think my time's up, actually. Is there any other questions
Or comment.
or comments?
You can see the variety here. She could have a whole show on these kids from Ghana. A whole show, a gallery built of that. But you see the diversity in the media. Anybody who wants to say anything to Linda before she sits down?
Any question about art or anything, how you can get started, just working? Just do it. That's one of the things. If you keep waiting until you think you're ready, that's like just going to school. I mean, who's ready? You just jump in there and you do it. Okay? Thank you.